to Top 10 Movies of the Decade. I'm Henry Higgins, and in this, the penultimate episode before the grand finale, we're going to be looking at 2018. So we're going to go through another 10 movies in order to see which from this year joins the other 8 movies already in the final, with one last movie joining them in the next episode before we go on and crown our movie of the decade. In at number 10 is an adaptation of the Ernest Cline book, Ready Player One. Directed by Steven Spielberg, stars Ty Sheridan in the lead role, has Olivia Cooke, Ben Mendelsohn, who has appeared a few times in the list already, T.J. Miller, Simon Pegg, and Mark Rylance. And this movie, I've mentioned it before, the nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and when we look back at certain things, nostalgia clouds our opinion. This is Nostalgia the movie. I mean, they were unable to get all the pop culture references from the book. Different studios, different rights and such like. Made it quite hard. But they managed to cram in so much into this film. There's literally hundreds of pop culture references, cameos, little Easter eggs. There's literal Easter eggs in the movie as well. If you've ever read the book or seen the movie, you know what that entails. And the fact that they get so much into the runtime, it makes certain scenes in this movie, like the street race and the epic battles, infinitely watchable because there are so many characters in the background that you could spend hours and hours going over freeze frames just finding everyone. Ty Sheridan is always good value. He's great as the main protagonist in this one. Supported well by those around him. Olivia Cooke as Artemis and Lena Waithe as H. They are excellent supporting characters. They give a sense of depth. They're not one-note, one-dimensional entities in the movie. And everyone in this film has an online ego based in Oasis and the real life ego, so they're doing double duty a lot of the time as well. Mark Rylance adds such a touch of class as James Halliday, who created the Oasis, whose death kickstarts the story that we've got going on in the movie. Simon Pegg is nice in the film as well, and Ben Mendelsohn he's a great villain actor. He's astounding, which is why his turn in Captain Marvel as Talos, his casting was perfect for the subversion in that film, where in the comics the Skrulls are generally evil, but in this movie, in the Captain Marvel movie, but in Captain Marvel, we're led to believe that because he's played by Ben Mendelsohn, and then you find out he's actually a really nice guy. So Ben Mendelsohn does great villain. In the movie itself, the Oasis isn't that far-fetched of a concept. It's essentially what we've had online with games before, it's just obviously more in depth with the technology. Second Life, for example, has been going on for a very long time, and that's essentially what this is. It's a souped-up Second Life. I mean, some would argue that we have that now, with so many people who spend the majority of their life online. That which is essentially what the Oasis is. It's an escape from real-world drudgery. And as a concept, it's easy to see watching the movie why it's so attractive. The special effects are stunning. The action scenes, particularly the final battle, is just, as I mentioned, it's an orgy for the eyes. There's so much to take in. But what it does is it counterbalances that very well with heart, with emotion, with character, and it all melds together into an excellent hodgepodge of everything you would hope it would be. And the nostalgia isn't a crutch that this movie leans on. It's a support for the rest of the story in the best way possible. As I was putting this together, I read that Ernest Cline is working on Ready Player 2, which is going to follow up this story. So I would imagine a movie tie-in is virtually guaranteed based on the success of this film. Cline himself said it would be the same characters, but in a different type of story, though one still packed with pop culture references. It's not a perfect movie, but it is an extremely good one, and it's a fantastic way for us to kick off 2018 in at number 10. Following that, at number 9, it's the second A Star Wars story, this time Solo. And it's by Ron Howard, who there's also Phil Lord and Christopher Miller involved in it as well. Ron Howard took over late in the production. It has Aiden Ehrenreich stepping into Harrison Ford's shoes as Han Solo. Not an easy task by any stretch. Woody Harrelson making another appearance in the list. Emilia Clarke, Donald Glover, Thandie Newton, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Joonas Suotamo, and Paul Bettany, who's always worth a watch. And he has been in the list a couple of times as well. This one was a failure, at least financially, in the Star Wars canon. That can be attributed to a number of things. One, it was a mid-year release. It was released in early summer. So Star Wars movies are normally released around Christmas time, and we'd only had a Star Wars movie like 5 months before. So there was a bit of fatigue there. And the movie that had came out before Solo in the Star Wars canon had created a lot of negativity among the misogynists and the racists and the entitled. So that, coupled with it being a mid-year release, there'd only been a few months since Episode 8 and The Last Jedi, so there was still a bad taste left from the crybaby antics of the incels, the racists and the misogynists in the wake of The Last Jedi. That all combined meant that this was on a hiding to nothing, really. But for me, while there are missteps in the movie, most glaringly how Han Solo got his Solo surname, also that he fought for the Empire at one point, didn't like that, but these are overcome by the sheer charisma of the lead actors and the supporting actors. Aiden Ehrenreich in the title role, he embodies what a young Han Solo would be like. He's not been worn down and gruff and world weary yet, like we see in episode 4. Woody Harrelson is just Woody Harrelson as Tobias Beckett, Han Solo's mentor, who he learned a lot from. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is excellent voicing L337, and Donald Glover is the standout as Lando Calrissian. Again, not an easy role to take over when it had been done so well by Billy D. Williams, but Glover makes it his own, and his sheer presence and charisma is also a saving grace for the movie, and another reason why I hope they do a follow-up to this with a younger version of Han Solo and Lando. I will say though that Emilia Clarke is really underused in the movie. She's like Han's love interest at the beginning, and then she's gone for a long period of time, and then she ends up being quite the villain towards the end. It's a waste of her talents, and I believe that she was going to be used more in a follow-up movie than she was in this one, and it doesn't look like we're going to get that now. However, with those misgivings, certain points in the movie are still worthy reference points from what we know in the main episode 1-9 series. Specifically, how Han met Chewie, how he got the Millennium Falcon, which we'd heard the stories of. The infamous Kessel Run is also in the film, and that is, to me, that's perfect Han Solo as we know him. Those are fun, but they pale when compared to the train heist, which is the big set piece of the movie. It was also shown partly in the trailers. That is epic, that is pure Star Wars, it's pure adventure, it's pure exhilaration, and for me that itself is worth the price of admission. So while Solo, a Star Wars story, is arguably the first overall failure, it is inarguably the first overall failure when it comes to finances, but critically it got a bad rap, I think. We enjoyed it. Josh and I enjoyed it. It is a good movie. If you avoided it simply because of the bad hype it was getting, we'd urge you to give it another go. If you watched it and you had a bad taste in your mouth due to all the Last Jedi stuff, again, give it another watch. Give it another try. And for us, we enjoyed it enough to make it our number 9. Splashing into number 8 is another comic book adaptation. We're back in the DCEU. It's Jason Momoa as Aquaman. And right off the bat, this is excellent, this movie. It's directed by James Wan, who has directed a few of the Fast and Furious movies. He's directed some of the Saw movies, and obviously he directed this. Another fantastic entry in DCEU, which is actually, at the moment, it's 10 movies deep, the DCEU at this point, which surprised me when I looked at it with all the movies that have came out, including the ones that are currently in production. It's 10 movies deep. That's actually pretty impressive. The cast here, Jason Momoa is obviously returning from his escapades in Justice League. Amber Heard is in here. Willem Dafoe is excellent. Patrick Wilson is also phenomenal in this movie. Dolph Lundgren is in it. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is Black Manta, who is absolutely astounding. He's also going to be in the upcoming Candyman sequel, reboot, whatever it may be. Ludi Lin, Tamura Morrison, always great value, and Nicole Kidman is in there as Aquaman's mum. And it's safe to say the DCEU has had a much bumpier ride than the MCU. The MCU has had its hiccups, but the MCU has obviously built its universe over a longer period of time at this point. It built it slowly over a number of phases, introducing characters here and there, then teaming them up. Whereas the DC went from one solo movie to a versus movie to a team up. So it was quite a jump straight away. However, personally, as mentioned in previous videos, Josh and I have enjoyed every entry in the DCEU to varying degrees and for varying reasons, but they've all had their good points. Some of them, like Wonder Woman, were excellent. Others, like Man of Steel, is absolutely superb. Batman v Superman does have its flaws, but I thought it was a really great movie, as did Josh. And Ben Affleck's Batman is the best on-screen version of Batman that you're likely to see. Although, at the time of filming this, we have just seen the trailer for The Batman, Matt Reeves' version of the story with Robert Pattinson in the title role. And oh my god, that was astounding. We need to see more, but I believe he will be on a par with Affleck's Batman based on what we've seen. So, as we were saying, we've enjoyed the movies in the DCU, but we can see where other people have had issues. Aquaman, the character, was a standout in Justice League, and after Wonder Woman started righting the ship, at least critically, with the general viewing audience, in this one, Arthur Curry does the same, as Jason Momoa and Amber Heard are a fantastic double act. Willem Dafoe is amazing as Arthur's mentor. Patrick Wilson is great as Orm, Ocean Master. As I said, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is excellent as Black Manta. He has the right amount of pathos and nastiness about him, but justified in such a way that can be twisted. In wrestling, they say the best heels are the ones who can justify their actions and believe that they're right. In this, Black Manta believes that he's right. And last but not least, Tamura Morrison and Nicole Kidman, they give the movie its heart as Arthur Curry's parents. Tamura Morrison, a human, Nicole Kidman, Atalana, the Queen of Atlantis, and how they come together and pine for each other and such like is a gorgeous story. And somehow through direction and cinematography and just general script ideas, they made talking to fish cool. Because there was always a joke that was Aquaman's power he talks to fish. In this, they make it a joke and then flip it and make it the coolest thing going. Another excellent thing in this movie is the trench, which are nasty creatures. Wouldn't look at a place like Guillermo del Toro, Lovecraftian thing. The trench and the main scene of them diving into the trench is gorgeous, wide angle cinematography. The climactic battle itself is a blur of sea creatures and Atlanteans just going at it. We have riding sharks. We have Atlanteans riding sharks into battle. It's what you want from an Aquaman movie. And lastly, not only did they make talking to fish cool, they made the green and gold suit look epic. Now, obviously, Jason Momoa's in it, so it automatically looks epic anyway. Anything he does is just epic. The guy is so damn cool. And in this, he earns the green and gold costume as the King of Atlantis, and it looks amazing. So at this point, I have no doubt that anything James Wan touches when he comes back for Aquaman 2. The last report I saw had him coming back. Jason Momoa is definitely obviously going to be back as Arthur Curry. Amber Heard may not be back as Mera, but everyone else who survived the first movie should come back in some fashion. And it'll just be very interesting to see where they take it from here, because at this point the DCEU is in the right direction, with DC Fandom just showing excerpts from the Suicide Squad and also the Snyder Cut. We have Wonder Woman 84 coming, Shazam is in there, Shazam 2 is coming, we saw footage from Black Adam as well. There is so much going right for the DCEU at the moment, and DC Fandom just lit a fire under the fandom of the DC Universe, comics, video games and movies and TV shows. So at this point they have a lot of goodwill, and I hope they build on it. Aquaman was a great stepping stone after Wonder Woman, and for us, it's our number 8 for 2018. Number 7 is a sequel to a movie a number of you should have thought was number 1 in 2016, and it's Deadpool 2. It's obviously a follow-up to Deadpool, which was a labour of love for Ryan Reynolds, who returns as the Merc with a Mouth. David Leitch is the director this time out. Josh Brolin is in his Cable, excellent. Morena Baccarin returns. We have Julian Dennison. Zazie Beetz is in his Domino. T.G. Miller's back. Jack Casey and Brianna Hildebrand also returns as Negasonic Teenage Warhead, who was the standout surprise for me in the first movie. Obviously, she's not going to be much of a surprise in this one. However, as we'll talk about later in the movie, Ryan Reynolds isn't only playing Wade Wilson in this film, who he is also playing was a surprise, an excellent surprise, and redeemed another character from a previous X-Men movie. So why is this so low down, relatively speaking, in comparison to Deadpool? Deadpool came in at number 2 in 2016. Why is Deadpool 2 down at number 7? Obviously, the strength of the movies that are going to come after it is one factor, but also there wasn't that element of novelty, which I discussed with Avengers compared to Avengers Age of Ultron, with it, and certain things seemed a bit more forced, certain things didn't work as well, some of the jokes were laid on a bit too thick, but when this was on fire, it was red hot. Most of the cast are back, along with some new characters, mainly the X-Force crew, which you saw in the trailers leading up to this, which had the pre-release marketing focusing on X-Force, which was an amazingly well done bait and switch when you see the movie. The fact that they did so much marketing and building on who X-Force was, who was cast, what the characters were, for them to essentially kill them off almost immediately was fantastic. That was perfect Deadpool humour for me. That Brad Pitt was cast as the Vanisher and you only see him at the point of his demise was a fantastic joke as well. Fourth wall breaks are also pretty well done. They're not as forced as you could expect. I did mention earlier that some of the humour did seem forced and shoehorned in. The fourth wall breaks weren't so much. With one of the best little quick fourth wall in jokes was an appearance of the First Class X-Men, when they were talking about how the production budget wouldn't stretch to important characters. Then you open sliding doors and the entire First Class group is in there. The doors get closed again and Wade doesn't see them. That was fantastically done. While the comedy itself is dark at times, it doesn't hide away from the fact that this is actually a dark tragedy as well. There's elements of tragedy within the story, both with Deadpool and with Cable. And the writing allows these elements to breathe between the jokes. Especially when Cable, and Josh Brolin is amazing as Cable. He now has this and Thanos as iconic comic book movie roles. He is fantastic as Cable with the gruffness and everything else. And his backstory is one of tragedy. What would have been a real life tragedy, however, is that when this came out, not long after this came out, the Fox sale to Disney, Marvel, had gone through. So there was a real fear that this is it, this is the end of the road for this character. However, Kevin Feige has stated that they do wish to continue this version of Deadpool. They do wish to keep him R-rated in his solo movies. I'm sure they could find some clever ways to incorporate him into the more mainstream MCU movies. There's a number of ways they could do that. But Feige himself said there is room for R-rated content in the wider MCU, which will hopefully also include Blade, because that was announced. But we'll wait and see. Ryan Reynolds has had discussions with Marvel. He has spoken about his excitement that they can continue this franchise, and I hope that they do. However, if they don't, then all I will say is at least this movie gave us a perfect Juggernaut. Juggernaut was done right in this film, and he was not mentioned in the marketing, he was not shown in the marketing, no one leaked him until you saw him in the movie. And he's voiced by Ryan Reynolds, and he is the Juggernaut as you would expect him, this massively over-muscled force of nature. He literally rips Deadpool in half at one point. He battles Colossus in an excellent fight. And it's just what Juggernaut should have been. There was no running like through things and stuff. Obviously, the Juggernaut, once he starts going, you can't stop him. That's the point of him. He has like kinetic energy. Once he gets rolling, he can't be stopped unless he stops himself. However, in this, he's just a big monstrous brute. And all of that combined has Deadpool 2 taking our number 7 slot. Sticking with comics and Marvel, but this time in the MCU, our number 6 movie is possibly the most ambitious crossover ever committed to film. It's Avengers Infinity War. And when I put this list together, I was surprised how low down this was in the list. Because Josh and I obviously adored this movie. And it's from Anthony and Joe Russo, who have done a number of movies in the MCU at this point. It's chronologically the penultimate episode in the Infinity Saga, because Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel were both set before the events of this film. So this is in Infinity War chronologically. So this and Endgame chronologically follow each other. The cast list, and again, I'm going to look at this because there's so many names, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on my notes here. But look at the cast. Just look at the names in this cast. We've got Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Daniel Guerrera. We have Letitia Wright, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana, Josh Brolin, Chris Pratt, Peter Dinklage, Pom Klementieff, Karen Gillan, Vin Diesel, and Bradley Cooper. So many names, so many characters, all in one movie, all in one epic crossover event. And not one of the people named in that list is a bit part character. They are all main characters from this series. It's astounding. And the reason this worked, the reason the crossover worked, where for a lot of people Justice League failed, is we earned this. We earned this crossover. And by we, I mean the fans, the actors, the writers, all the directors, everyone involved with the MCU earned this moment. We were 18, 19 movies deep at this point. We had multiple Avengers movies, crossovers, we had introductions, we had sequels, we had origin stories over a 10-year period leading to this point. 10 years, 18 movies, And it's the culmination of everything coming together, and that's why Infinity War was a success story. Another great thing they did in the movie was make Thanos the protagonist of this film. Obviously, he's the antagonist of the Infinity Saga and everything else, but Infinity War is Thanos' film. You know, it follows him and his journey to acquire the stones. Having the Avengers, Sorcerers, Asgardians, and the Guardians all separated for the majority of the film is also a wise move. And why we were separated was set up beautifully in previous movies and the beginning of this one. And having them separate, it meant we got to see each of them have their own moments before we had the climactic battles on Titan and on Earth, which also kept them separate. So everyone got a chance to have their own moment without being lost in the background of an overall epic scene. The effects, as you can imagine, are stunning in this film. Everything about it is excellent. The action sequences just pop from the screen, from the opening on the Asgardian ship, where Hulk gets absolutely mullered by Thanos. He's completely outmatched at this point, and Thanos doesn't even use the Power Stone, even though he could have, because he had it in his possession. He'd already destroyed Xandar to get the Power Stone. And all the way through that to the climax in Wakanda, everything is really well done, plus there's real stakes. And all of this made Infinity War an excellent comic book film. Loki getting killed early on made you realise no one is safe here. Heimdall got killed, Hulk got destroyed, and then Thanos just went on a tear. The Battle of Wakanda itself is epic in scope also, and is perfectly balanced, as all things should be, with the most somber ending of any MCU movie to this point. I would argue even the most somber ending to any comic book movie, MCU or otherwise, to this point. I mean, the good guys lost. They lost. Thanos won, and we lost a number of heroes at that point. They got dusted. And of course we knew they would find a way back. It's a comic book movie after all. But the fact that the movie ended with them losing was astounding. Josh cried when Spider-Man dusted, and I welled up a little bit just how it was done. The writers, I believe, made a wise choice. They were going to end the movie as Thor's axe hit Thanos. They were going to have the snap be the first thing you see in Endgame. But they wisely had the snap be the last big moment of Infinity War, and then Endgame had us jump so far ahead in time. And ending the movie with Thanos victorious, sitting down, watching the sunset on a grateful universe like he always said he would do. He didn't want ultimate power, he didn't want to rule the universe. He wanted to save the universe in his own twisted way, and in his mind he did that. He can now rest. And I think as the credits started rolling, the words of Peter Parker were going through all of our minds as we collectively said, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. It was such a downbeat ending to one of the biggest, most successful movies of all time. And it's a film that Josh and I have watched a couple of times since then. It's always enjoyable. There's a lot of fantastic quotable lines, there's some great characters, and Infinity War rounds out the first half of 2018 at number 6. Claws out for number 5 as we stay in the MCU. This time it's Chadwick Boseman in his third MCU movie in the list, his second chronologically, in the title role of Black Panther. And this was directed by Ryan Coogler, who also did the first Creed movie. Stars Chadwick Boseman in the title role, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, Dano Gurira's back, Martin Freeman, Daniel Kaluuya, who was also in Get Out, as we saw for the #1 pick of 2017. Letitia Wright, Winston Duke is fantastic. Angela Bassett, Forrest Whitaker, again, he's featured in this list a lot, as has Andy Serkis. And after introducing the character in Civil War, it was time for T'Challa to get his own outing, the Black Panther to have a solo adventure in the MCU. And one of the great things about the movie is Wakanda itself. It's futuristic, but also harking back to traditional African aesthetics and values. Winston Duke steals the scenes he's in as M'Baku, while all the supporting cast excel in the roles they've been given. None more so than Michael B. Jordan as the antagonist, Killmonger. It's arguable, it's debatable, but Killmonger for me is one of the best villains I've ever had. He is nuanced, he is justified in what he's doing. He has been wronged by his nation, by his ancestors. He has been wronged, and he has every justification for what he's doing. Again, it's the methods that are going into it rather than the reason behind those methods. With the movie, as I said, Wakanda is gorgeous, but they also have a lot of scenes set in the astral plane, which are visually stunning, aesthetically, colours, everything. They're just so unique to this movie. The action is frantic. The fighting is visceral, it's in your face. None more so when Killmonger challenges T'Challa for the throne of Wakanda. The costume designs are astounding, especially for all the different tribes. You can tell they've obviously consulted experts in the fields to make sure everything is right. The cast, I mean, obviously with a movie called Black Panther set in an African nation, you would expect this, but it's a Hollywood movie and we were only really getting a foothold in the diversity situation. So for this movie to have a predominantly black cast, no token white saviors. There are 2 white characters in it, which is Andy Serkis' Ulysses Claw and Martin Freeman's character. They are the white characters in the movie and they serve a purpose other than just being forced in for the sake of having white people in the movie. The story does push the MCU along and gives you a much more in-depth look at what being the Black Panther actually means. Also lays the groundwork for what we would see in Infinity War in Wakanda. And the only downside I can think of for this film was the final battle was a little bit of a letdown. I know I've extolled the virtues before in this list about the main villain being a mirror of the hero, and it gives a great idea of what the hero could be if he lost his moral compass. However, in this one, it's a bit of a CGI cluster, really. You know, there's so much going on, you kind of lose all the character and humanity that had been built up in the previous scenes. Also, the death of Ulysses Claw is anticlimactic. It's understandable in the movie, but he's a character I would like to have seen more of. But overall, it is a top tier MCU movie, and the fact that a film with a 99% non-white cast made over $1 billion at the global box office, that's awesome. That set a precedent, and that's something I hope they continue with people of colour, with non-white ethnicities. Shang-Chi coming up is probably going to be the big test for that. But Black Panther is an excellent film, and it comes in at our number 5 for 2018. Moving away from the comic books for a second, number 4 is another sequel slash reboot of a horror franchise. You've heard me mention it a number of times in previous episodes when we were talking about other horror movies, especially when I was talking about Get Out in the last episode, and it's David Gordon Green's Halloween, co-written by Danny McBride, which is another, which we were mentioning, is a comedy writer coming in to do a horror and doing it exceptionally well. It's got Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode. We have Judy Greer, who is featured in this list a few times, Andy Matichak, Will Patton, always an excellent value actor, Virginia Gardner, James Jude Courtney, and Nick Castle returning as Michael Myers. Nick Castle played him in the original movie. After some dodgy sequels in the original run of Halloween movies and the divisive Rob Zombie reboot slash sequel, which I enjoyed for different reasons. I really enjoyed his Halloween. His Halloween 2 was bonkers, but there were some nice things in that film. We have David Gordon Green in the director's chair, as I mentioned, along with him and Danny McBride in the writer's room. This is this is how you do go back to basics. They are basically doing a direct follow-up to the original Halloween from 1978. So anything Halloween 2 to Halloween 6 never happened. Laurie Strode being Michael's sister, non-canon. And John Carpenter's involvement in this obviously gave it a bit of kudos as well. Now, what this means is Michael was captured at the end of the first movie. He was captured after his rampage where Laurie Strode survived, and he's been locked up for 40 years since that point. Because of that, all the occult bullshit that was brought in the later Halloween movies 4, 5, and 6, the Mark of Thorn and all that pish, that's all been removed. That's all gone. We essentially still have Michael, who we have no idea why he kills. He just does. We have no idea why he has a fixation with Laurie Strode. He just does. He just does things. And he kills people. And that's terrifying. The unknown is a terrifying prospect. So stripping all of that away and leaving yourself asking the questions of why does he kill? Why is he the way he is? What is he doing? What is his motivation? And when we don't know, that makes him more terrifying. And in this film, he is terrifying again. The kills are brutal. They are nasty. They are what Michael Myers should be. He is not a Freddy Krueger. He is not a Jason Voorhees. He is simply, I'm going to stick you with this sharp thing until you stop breathing. That's what Michael Myers does. So in this movie, that's what he is. He is simply evil personified. The movie has an awesome score. Again, touching on the original movie and modernising it. Jamie Lee Curtis is magnificent as Laurie Strode, who has been suffering from PTSD ever since that night in Haddonfield 40 years ago. She has been preparing and knowing Michael will one day get out, and she's been preparing for that day her entire life, to the point that she is estranged from her daughter and her granddaughter. Played wonderfully by Judy Greer and Andy Matichik, respectively. Bringing Nick Castle back gives a lovely continuity as well, because you get to see that Michael has aged in that time, though he is only Michael on screen for the unmasked scenes. They've got a younger actor playing Michael when any action is required and such like, but for all intents and purposes, it's the original Michael Myers back again. And it's excellent. It's an excellent horror movie. The ending and the whole construct of the trap that Laurie has laid for Michael is wonderfully done. The actual ending of the movie sets up the next one called Halloween Kills, which was due to be released this year, but COVID scuppered it, so it's going to be released in October of next year, so we've got a long way to go. But that does mean that they can perfect what they're doing in the movie. They can do some more post-production stuff. And there's going to be a third one called Halloween Ends, so they're making this a trilogy. We got a little snippet of the beginning of Halloween Kills, and it picks up exactly from the end of this movie, with the building burning, Laurie, her daughter and her granddaughter in an ambulance being taken away, and she realises the fire department are going to her house to put the flames out, and she is terrified because she knows that will save Michael. That's all we've seen from Halloween Kills. I am so excited to see that movie. I am over the moon that they managed to recapture the grittiness and the nastiness of Halloween with this film. And I look forward to seeing what they can pull out for the other two movies that they have planned. So while we wait for that, Halloween is number 4. In at number 3, and we're back in comic book territory, it's a Marvel character. It's not the MCU. But I don't know how that's going to go in the future based on various things that we've seen. However, this is separate, it's the Sony Spider-Verse, and it's Tom Hardy in the title role of Venom. Now, it's directed by Ruben Fleischer. It stars Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, Michelle Williams as Anne Wayne, Riz Ahmed is in it, Scott Hayes, and Reed Scott. They round out the principal cast. Now, the big thing about this going into it is it's a Venom movie without Spider-Man, without any reference to Spider-Man or overt reference to Spider-Man. And anyone who knows the comic books knows that the Venom symbiote started life as a black suit for Spider-Man. And when Spider-Man rejected the black suit, the symbiote went to Eddie Brock and that created Venom. Hence why he has Spider-Man-like eyes, although more creepy and demonic. Why he had the white Spider-Man logo on his chest and such like. And why he used his goo to be like webs. But in this, we didn't have that. And it shouldn't work, but it does. What settles the movie is Tom Hardy. He really anchors the movie with a bonkers, in all the right ways, a bonkers turn as Eddie Brock when he is infected with the symbiote. Reed Scott, as Anne Wayne's new boyfriend, plays a fleshed out character that actually avoids the cliche of the new boyfriend being a bit of a dick, which they also did in Ant-Man as well. So it's nice to see it here also. And Michelle Williams, who's been a long-term favourite of mine, going back to Dawson Creek days, she is excellent in the lead female role as Anne Wayne. Where this movie had a benchmark to succeed, and it was a low benchmark, was Spider-Man 3 and that version of Eddie Brock Venom. Apart from the actual creation scene, when Topher Gracie's Eddie Brock became Venom, that was a disappointing version of the character, although I can see what they were trying to do. In this, they don't have that baggage of Spider-Man, which really helps make Eddie Venom its own thing. And the symbiote effects are fantastically realised on screen for the most part. There is a little bit near the end in the climactic fight that's a little dodgy on the CGI, but with the amount of effects being rendered at one time there, that could be understandable. Venom himself is hilarious and genuinely frightening as a creation. He's also done right, and as I mentioned, it puts the Spider-Man 3 version to shame. He is huge. He is what Venom should be. Oversized, big head, all the teeth, big massive tongue, and he eats people's heads. He bites people's heads off, and that happens on screen in a PG-13 movie. They do it in such a way with clever camera angles and cuts and such like, but there's at least 3 heads bitten off in this film. And it's fantastic to see that. Riot, the evil symbiote in the movie, he's a bit rote as a villain, but he's a means to an end, if nothing else, and he serves his purpose well enough. The action scenes, so the first time he ever becomes Venom, is pretty damn cool. The lobby fight with the SWAT team is, for a lot of people, including Josh and myself, the standout set piece in the movie. The whole mask copy thing is excellent, and how that unfolds. That to me is what Venom should be. He is just destroying people, he's flinging guys around. He's about to eat someone's head, but Anne comes in and stops him. The whole movie is just excellent. Some people didn't like the movie, some people marked it down, I think some people took it in the wrong way as well, they misjudged the tone. But for me, Venom's a great movie. I can go back, I've watched it a couple of times now. And every now and again there'll be clips on YouTube and I'll give them a watch as well. The film has so many fantastic little moments, and for me it was Sony announcing that they are going to create their own adjunct to the MCU for Spider-Verse villains that don't include Spider-Man himself, although with Michael Morbius and his movie coming out, that could all change. Venom 2 is also in the works as they expand the live-action Spider-Verse. That's Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which has Woody Harrelson, who has a cameo at the end of this movie as Cassidy in prison, post-credit scene, as the titular Carnage. in the sequel. That is possibly going to actually have a crossover with Spider-Man if the rumours are to be believed. Morbius coming out, we've seen the trailer for that as well, which stars Jared Leto in the title role and also features Michael Keaton, who everyone believes is going to be Adrian Toomes. They've set it up in such a way that that's who he appears to be. I can't see it being anything else at this point. And it seems like the MCU and the Sonyverse are combining. This could be because the movie rights to Spider-Man still belong to Sony. He is leased to Marvel Disney for the MCU. So he can go back to the Sony Spider-Verse at any point. And I think that as a compromise, he's going to be let back into the Spider-Verse that Sony's creating here, while also remaining available to the MCU down the line for team-up movies. That would possibly be the best of both worlds. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're doing when they combine it all together. Morbius I'm very excited about, Venom 2 I'm very excited about, and the potential crossover for all of that is astounding, is a very enticing prospect. I'm really excited for it. And Venom's first solo outing takes our number 3 spot for 2018. For number 2, we stick with the comic books, we stick with Spider-Man, we stick with Sony, but this time it's the animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And this was directed by Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey and Rodney Rothman. It features the voices of Shamek Moore, Jake Johnson, Haley Stansfeld, Mahershala Ali, Brian Tyree Henry, Lily Tomlin, Luna Lauren Velez, John Mulaney, Kimiko Glenn, Nicolas Cage and Liev Schreiber. That is a fantastic cast, and it's another appearance on the list for Spider-Man. Or should that be Spider-Man and Spider-Woman? The film itself, as hence the Spider-Verse, it covers multiple realities. The multiverse is explored in here. And the multiple realities trope is done expertly well, with each Spider-Man feeling unique to his or her reality, aesthetics and everything else being unique. Shamek Moore is a revelation as Miles Morales in this film, and the multiple cameos and supporting roles are also excellent. Haley Stansfeld, who I first saw in True Grit and seen her grow up in the movies, she owns it as Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen. She is fantastic in that role as well, and she really anchors the movie. There's some great villains in the film also, including an unexpected, although it is telegraphed if you know where and when to look, female Dr. Octopus. Kingpin is in here, the Prowler is in here, and how it works with Peter Parker, our Peter Parker, the Miles Morales Peter Parker who has died, Peter Parker Noir played by Nicolas Cage, we have Peter Porker, and the film in the post-credit scene sets up other Spider-Men for a future sequel, which is guaranteed to happen. The set pieces are amazing, the variants in the animation style, not just in the separate universes, but when they're all mixed, everyone keeps their own animation style. So there's a hodgepodge of low-res, high-res, different animation styles, drawing styles and everything else, all in one frame. It's stunning how they pulled it off. And one of the best set pieces they did in the animation is when Miles finally gets the courage to take the leap of faith. That is a fist pump, arms in the air moment if ever I saw one. The movie ending positively screams sequel that I hope we get sooner rather than later. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is basically the Spider-Man crossover from the comics put on screen in an animation style that is just out of this world. Everything about it just works. It's absolutely perfect. And in a year of fantastic comic book movies, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, in at number 2, is the top comic book movie of 2018. But it's not the number 1 movie of the year. That belongs to Leigh Whannell and his movie, Upgrade. And this, Leigh Whannell is a guy who I've seen so many movies from, and I've never been disappointed by anything he's done at all. He is just a fantastic director, and with this he has Logan Marshall Green in the lead role, who really looks like Tom Hardy, Betty Gabriel, Harrison Gilbertson, Benedict Hardy and Melanie Vallejo. that is, to me, that's almost a cast of unknowns, except Logan Marshall Green, who I have seen in other things before. It's produced by Blumhouse, who are currently my favourite production company in Hollywood. They have had so many great movies out over the years, including this year's The Invisible Man, which I was lucky enough to get to see in the cinema before the whole lockdown thing started. If you haven't seen it, do what you can to see it. It is astounding and another fantastic flag-waving moment for me when it comes to advocating why reboots and remakes are necessary in film. In addition to that, for me, Lee Wannell has never directed a bad movie. So going into this, the excitement was there. That I had no idea what the movie was about. I hadn't seen any trailers. I just heard that a new movie came out from Blumhouse and Lee Wannell was directing it, so suddenly I was very excited. I went in thinking this is going to be a good movie, but there was no way I would have known how balls out this film was going to be. There's no way I would have known how Logan Marshall Green, who is, as I said, the spit for Tom Hardy, would be so epic in the title role. He plays a character called Grey, who receives the upgrade of the title. And what's also interesting as a comparison, because Tom Hardy and Logan Marshall Green do look alike, in the same year they both play a character where their body is overtaken by something from the inside. With Tom Hardy, it's the Venom symbiote. And in this, for Logan Marshall Green, it's an artificial intelligence called STEM. What is also fantastic about this movie is STEM, and not just how the AI is voiced, but how it controls Grey's body, how it manipulates it, and the way that's done on screen. And as I say, it's done similar to Venom. I believe it's complete coincidence how these movies done it in a similar way, where the character can see his body being moved around, but he's not the one doing the moving. He is a passenger in his own frame. And like Tom Hardy, Logan Marshall Green deserves a ton of credit for how he controls his body and how he makes it appear that he's not in control of his own body, of his own senses, how he is being controlled from the inside. Another strength of the movie, even with the over-the-top premise that we have, is the action sequences and how, while it's science fiction to a great degree, there is a fantastic sense of realism around all of it. Grey Trace isn't the only one who has upgrades in the movie. Other people have upgrades as well, and how they are done and implemented is Cronenberg body horror in a way, with some of the lower level goons and such like that you see in the movie. Despite the over the top premise in general, everything is kept kind of grounded. The grittiness of the world created by the artists on the movie is palpable. You can feel it coming through the screen. The action sequences are glorious. The tech on display for the others who have had various upgrades evokes some elements of Existenz as well, which is another great movie if you haven't seen that. I say Logan Marshall Green is the driving force in the movie, but the supporting cast is all very well done. Also including his wife, who is murdered, which is part of the catalyst for why he gets the upgrade, his mum, the detective looking into it, the inventor of STEM. There are so many things going on in this movie, but nothing is muddled, nothing is lost. And all of the movie comes together in a fantastic climactic battle. And the ending reminds me of a movie from much earlier in the series, Repo Men, with how it plays out and how it presents the fate of the main character, and that's no bad thing. Repo Man was a great movie as well. So with all of that said, Upgrade is the best movie of 2018 because of how awesome it is, coupled with the out of nowhere-ness of it just being presented to us by Lee Wannell and Blumhouse. Other films on this list were great, but they had hype behind them, months and months of hype in some cases, whereas Upgrade just came in and, like STEM with Grey, it just took over. Upgrade is phenomenal, is easily the best movie of 2018. All the other movies were great. Upgrade was just a level above them based on the reasons we've discussed, and it is a very worthy winner of 2018. It's our #1 movie of the year. It goes into the final. We now have 9 movies in the finale. Join us in the next episode where we go over 2019 and find out which of the movies from last year will join them and round out the top 10 in the finale, 1 movie for each year. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Thank you for sticking with the series. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please leave your comments below as it relates to the list. Would you have things higher, lower? What movies do you think were in the list that shouldn't be there? What movies weren't on the list that you would put in there? Please leave all your comments below. If there are any movies from the list you haven't seen, hopefully take this as a recommendation to go and do so. So please like and share the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again next week, as I said. Keep yourself safe, wear a mask, look after yourself, look after each other. Goodbye.